inflammatory bowel disease, there are two diseases which come to our mind: ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And since the incidence of these diseases uh, is not very high in this part of the world, therefore we don't see enough patients of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. Also, usually we don't see it. Um, uh, when it comes to it comes in our attention over here. Usually, it is um, difficult to diagnose because of the rarity in this part of the world. They are quite common in the Western society. Now, inflammatory bowel disease can be differentiated on the basis of clinical features, endoscopy, biopsy, and lastly on the histology, because the two diseases have distinct histology. As we all know that inflammatory the exact etiology of these two diseases is unknown. It is usually theorized that because the normal gut flora which are present in the human intestine, they are and the mucosa of the human intestine, uh, they get dysregulated and they don't go together well, and an immune response is initiated which leads to this one of these disorders. Now we start with ulcerative colitis. As we all know, they are more commonly seen in the North America and Europe. Their mode of the incidence pattern is either in the very young age or in the old ages. Mostly, these are seen from 15 to 30 years. This is one group of individuals, and then later on in life, those individuals which are of the range of 50 to 70 years. Family history is very important, and the incidence is more in certain families, up to 10% increase in the incidence. Smoking is paradoxically has got a lower risk and a milder disease. Those who smoke usually have milder disease in case of ulcerative colitis, not in case of Crohn's disease, but in ulcerative colitis they have got a milder disease. Um, there may be previous history of bacterial bacterial infections of the GI tract like Campylobacter. They have got a higher risk of developing ulcerative colitis in later in life. Um, Contrary to the belief, psychological stress is not the cause of onset or relapse in ulcerative colitis. How do they present? Commonly, they can present as a usually as a diarrhea, urgency of the stool, pain, painful, painful defecation, bleeding, or abdominal pain. They can present bleeding usually in severe cases. Usually, they present with frequency of diarrhea and urgency. More rarely, fistulae, weight loss can be seen, and when the disease gets advanced and toxicity appears, then patient may present with fever. The natural history of the disease is such that they go into remission and then come back as a relapse, so it keeps on going for years. When we classify the disease, Montreal classification is used, and you can see here from S0 to S3. You can see S0 means there are no symptoms, while S1 milder symptoms, and you can see they are related to the number of stools per day. If 4 or less, they are called mild and they are labeled at S1. When the frequency of stool becomes more than that, it categorizes as 2. And when 6 or more stools, bloody stools, pulse rate which is more than 90 beats per minute, temperature which increases, and ESR of greater than 30. If these parameters sets in, then we can label this disease as severe form, which is S3. So from S0 to S3, depending upon the frequency of stools and presence or absence of toxicity. Apart from intestinal symptoms, ulcerative colitis also has extra intestinal manifestations. For example, arthritis may be present up to 20%. Knee, ankle, hip, shoulder, any joint can be involved. Similarly, ankylosing spondylitis, which is the hardening of the spine, usually in the susceptible individuals with HLA-B27 positive, they may be affected. Uh, HLA-B27 positive patients, people may be affected if they have ulcerative colitis as well. Erythema nodosum, a skin lesion, and pyoderma gangrenosum, a gangrenous skin lesion. It is also is associated with ulcerative colitis in as high as 50% of cases. This is important. Pyoderma gangrenosum. Other extraintestinal manifestations are primary sclerosing cholangitis, usually in younger men, and in those patients, the risk of colonic cancer, skin of colon C increases 5 times. It means that if sclerosing cholangitis is present concomitantly with ulcerative colitis, the risk of colonic cancer gets 5 times higher than when ulcerative colitis exists alone in a person. Um, Diagnosis. Based on clinical symptoms confirmed by objective findings from endoscopic and histological examination, we may able to diagnose. Endoscopic features are usually loss of vascular pattern, erythema inside the mucosa, friable mucosa which ready to bleed, very easily bleed, and it is seen readily on the endoscopic examination. We can see erosions, ulcerations, etc. On these are the endoscopic features. Um, Astrologically, when we take biopsy, and the astrological features are that the mucosa is full of crypt abscesses, infiltration of lamina propria with plasma cells, which are the inflammatory cells, eosinophils, lymphocytes, and mucin depletion in those areas. So this is a very characteristic feature, histological feature of ulcerative colitis. As I've already mentioned that these patients do have a higher risk of developing carcinoma of the GIT, carcinoma especially in the colon. And as you can see, higher the duration of illness, higher becomes the risk of carcinoma at 25% at 25 years. And you start from here, you can see it becomes greater and greater as the years pass by, and up to 65% where the disease is of 40 years duration. It's a very high risk. Other risk factor of developing carcinoma is pancolonic disease. If the whole colon from the cecum up to the rectum is involved, then the carcinoma development of carcinoma obviously becomes higher because more mucosa is at risk. And third factor is if the disease does not go into remission and reactivation, it continuously keeps on going like that. A continuous disease is also a greater risk for carcinoma. And then lastly, the severity of inflammation, which obviously suggests that as the inflammation is higher, the risk of dys- dysplasia is also higher. Well, as we all know that any disease first we if it is medically treatable, then the role of surgery goes into the background. The all the any disease which can be controlled with medication, obviously surgery does not comes in. Only when the medical treatment fails or the emergency sets in, then the role of surgery comes in. So initially, we have a variety of medications which we can use. For example, aminosalicylates, the first group, very popular, sulfasalazine, mesalamine, and what they do is they block the cyclooxygenase and lipoxygenase pathways of the arachidonic acid metabolism, therefore leads to lesser number of inflammatory metabolites of arachidonic acid. The toxicity of these medication is first of all nausea and agranulocytosis, means decreased number of granulocytes in the blood. So aminosalicylates is the first line treatment of ulcerative colitis. Then there is a role of corticosteroids like prednisolone, and it, as you know, corticosteroids are anti-inflammatory, and they block the phospholipase A2 pathway, and thereby decreasing the prostaglandins and leukotrienes, which are inflammatory molecules. Corticosteroids not only can be given orally or intravenously, but can also be administered parectally with lesser side effects, lesser systemic effects. Apart from aminosalicylates and corticosteroids, a third type of medication is immunomodulatory agents. These are the agents that modify the immune response, and you can see that azathioprine that inhibit the proliferation of T and B lymphocytes, thereby decreasing the cellular immunity. Cyclosporin, which inhibits interleukin 2 gene transcription, and again it has got the same effect. So these are immunosuppressive agents, and you can also see that these two drugs they are also given in organ transplant patients to suppress the immunity. So these immunosuppressive agents are also effective in the medical treatment of ulcerative colitis. Now, surgical treatment. When the medical treatment fails for one reason or the other, mostly then the role of surgery sets in, and approximately 20 to 30% of patients, up to one third of patients, may have surgery at one time or other in their life. The situations are categorized into three categories: emergency, urgent, and elective. Emergency is those patients where life threatening complications of ulcerative colitis sets in, and obviously they are not responsive to the medical treatment. Emergency situations are like patient is bleeding profusely from rectum, which is one of the complications of ulcerative colitis, or sometimes patients go into toxic megacolon, or sometimes they may go into perforation. So these are the emergency situations where the only treatment left is to do some sort of surgical procedure. Then there are urgent patients who urgently need some sort of treatment. It again is those patients, set of patients who have pancolitis with severe inflammation, and they need, and their medical treatment has been failed, and they also need some sort of surgery where you have to remove that segment, or sometimes you have to remove the total colon, total proctocolectomy. And the third category of patients who are selected for surgery are the elective patients. And again, with the longer duration of medical treatment, and the and where the medical treatment is not adequately helping the patient, or the medical treatment itself is producing side effects, or there is a high risk of dysplasia or development of the cancer has been developed. In those cases, obviously, surgery is the answer. So, what type of operations are done in case of ulcerative colitis? First of all, the minimum is the segmental colectomy, depending upon the involvement of a segment. So the involved segment is removed, and then you have to make some sort of either end-to-end anastomosis or a temporary diversion. Second operation, which is indicated in this disease, is abdominal colectomy with ileorectal anastomosis. I have already mentioned in certain very widespread disease in certain individuals, the whole colon up to the rectum is involved, and obviously the medicines are not effective in such individuals, and patient this problem leads to anemia, malnutrition, hypoproteinemia, and all sort of other problems associated with it. So in that case, surgery is the you have to remove the whole colon up to the rectum, and you make ileorectal anastomosis, or in more recently, you make a pouch of ileum by folding the ileum in a U shape, and then you make an anastomosis with the rectum. Or if the rectum is also involved, when you have taken out the rectum as well, you have to go right up to the anus, and you have to make an anastomosis of that ideal pouch to the anus, to the anal canal. Apart from that, this operation you have less little simpler operation. You don't make anastomosis with the anal canal, and you make an end ileostomy while removing the colon and the rectum. Ileostomy sometimes is made continent by making a valve in it, so that this ileostomy is not continuously pouring out the contents. Rather, the patient himself can pass a small catheter into it, and that ileostomy then empties into a container. That I've already mentioned, the ileo ileal pouch with anal anastomosis, which I've mentioned in wherever the total proctoclectomy is done, we have got options: endoleostomy, the valved continent ileostomy, or the ileoanal anastomosis. How can we prevent? The prevention, as is the old saying, that prevention is better than cure. So any disease which exists, our number one aim of a doctor is how can we prevent this disease to happen. So number one, ulcerative colitis patients at increased risk of colorectal cancer, we already know that, we have already mentioned. To screening is important. All those patients who are diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, they have to be screened. And first of all, 8 years after the onset, and then you can follow on yearly. Risk factor of colorectal cancer is duration and extent, which we have already discussed, and then severity of inflammation. This is already discussed. So now we have to come to the second disease of the inflammatory bowel diseases, which is Crohn's disease. And again, in the factors which are important are genetic factors, where family history is important, and the family history is the strongest risk factor for development of Crohn's disease. Environment, obviously, sedentary lifestyle, pollution, and as it is common in the western part of the world, the western diet is also implicated. Certain organisms are implicated. So all these factors are implicated. Nothing is 100% sure, but all these factors are associated with Crohn's disease. It presents, unlike ulcerative disease, it presents at any portion of the GI tract, as it is commonly said, from mouth to anus. Symptoms are abdominal pain, diarrhea, which sometimes is bloody, incontinence, and more important thing is that as compared to ulcerative colitis, the fistulae and perianal conditions are much common. Um, Also, extracolonic GI involvement is also there. Aphthous ulcers means ulcers of the mouth, inflammatory ulcers of the mouth, dysphagia, abdominal pain, and vomiting. Extracolonic GI involvement. Apart from those colonic and extracolonic, patient with chronic Crohn's disease may have a history of other immune disorders. Likewise, with ulcerative colitis, we classify Crohn's disease as well. Classification is to see how severe the disease is. So, classification on the basis of the extent of the disease. Disease L1 is disease confined to the terminal ileum only, and L2, L3, L4, L5 going on. L2 means disease confined to the colon. L3 is both colon and ileum is involved. Disease L4 is upper GI tract, whole upper GI tract is involved, and L4 plus L3 means disease involving the upper GI and the distal disease. So this is how you classify, so that the communication among the medical practitioners, the health providers, they is uniform. So you tell your colleague that this patient is suffering from L2, then he will clearly know that the disease is confined to colon. And if you tell the patient has L4 and L3, the colleague will come to know And this classification is important in terms of communication, effect of the treatment, and research, and outcomes as well. The second type of classification is the B classification, where B1 is without stricture formation, non-penetrating. B2 is strictures. I have to mention that this Crohn's disease is more prone to stricture formation because relative as comparing the ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease has inflammation spreading in the all courts of the GI tract, from the mucosa to the serosa. All courts may be involved. Ulcerative colitis, on the contrary, is the disease of the mucosa and seldom go beyond that. But Crohn's disease is through and through all court disease. So stricture is more common, much more common than the ulcerative colitis. So from B1 to B3P. B3P means perennially involving, a perennially penetrating disease. So this is how you classify. Diagnosis is based on history, findings, clinical findings, and objective findings by the laboratory studies. As with ulcerative colitis, we also have to rule out here as non-infectious cases like irritable bowel syndrome, which sometimes have similar symptoms, and an infectious diseases like Yersinia bacteria, Yersinia enterocolitis, that may mimic Crohn's disease. Here, endoscopy is gold standard for diagnosis, but since the disease is not only the disease of the colon, or the esophagus, radiological tests may assist in diagnosis like MRI, CT scan, abdominal ultrasound. They all assist in diagnosis. There are certain biomarkers which are which indirectly assist in the diagnosis, like CRP, the C-reactive protein, lactoferrin, and L-protectin. Treatment of patients with TD should be consulted to quit smoking. As with certificates, medical treatment depends on the disease activity, comorbidities, and other individual characteristics. Superiority of combination of thiopurines and human necrosis factor blockers are superior to the rather than individual modalities. And unlike ulcerative colitis, surgery is not curative all the time in Crohn's disease. Indications of surgery are intractability for patients with debilitating disease refractory to medical treatment, like intractable if intestinal infection takes place, or intra-abdominal abscesses and lumps are started forming, or the fistulas in the perineum or in the, and most of them involve the small intestine, and enterocutaneous fistulas which spontaneously into the abdominal wall, and they become a problem to the patient, and patient loses a lot of digestive fluids, proteins, and patient become malnutrited and hypoimmunic. Indications of surgery are the cancer risk, increased risk for development of adenocarcinoma, colon, and intestine. Observed prevalence is less as compared to ulcerative colitis, 0.3 in small intestine and 1.8 in large intestine. Non-functional bowel that has been excluded is another problem where malnutrition and bacterial overgrowth takes place. Growth retardation, obviously, of the younger patients is another indication for surgery. Prevention and screening is regular screening for active infection like tuberculosis, infectious hepatitis, etc. Colorectal cancer screening, patient with more than a third of colon is affected. And similarly, first screening colonoscopy at the 8 year after the onset, and then repeated after 2 years once remission is achieved, and every 3 years once patient becomes normal. Thank you very much.